It's February 1944, and the bustling docks of Naples, Italy, are enveloped in a frantic yet methodically choreographed disorder. Ships arrive and depart in a continuous flow. Their cargo holds packed with everything from ammunition crates to blankets, while Allied troops of all nationalities scurry across gangplanks, hauling gear or reporting to various checkpoints. The war in Italy has been grinding on for months, with Axis and Allied forces wrestling for control of key positions in the rugged landscape. Against this backdrop, the Polish Second Corps disembarks, a formation of 50,000 determined soldiers equipped with a remarkable array of vehicles, artillery pieces, and personal gear. They've come from distant lands and endured harrowing journeys, many having been freed from Soviet labor camps, only to reassemble under the Allied banner and join the British in pushing northward through Italy's difficult terrain. Standing amid the chaos is Archibald Brown, a British administrative clerk who diligently checks and rechecks lists of newly arrived units. His duty is to verify the roster of the 22nd Artillery Company, yet another Polish formation that has stepped off the vessel, dragging behind them crates, spare tires, and all manner of supplies. One by one, Brown calls out names, ticking them off in a worn ledger, until he arrives at an entry that causes him to frown and speak up. "Private Wojtek," he announces, scanning the group. Despite the ringing of cranes lifting equipment overhead and the clamor of men calling out orders, nobody steps forward. Brown clears his throat, raises his voice, and repeats, "Private Wojtek, report." A ripple of laughter breaks out among the Polish troops, growing more pronounced by the moment. With a knitted brow, Brown glances from face to face. "Is there a problem? Who is this Wojtek, and where is he?" he demands, his tone clipped by frustration. From the front rank, a colonel steps forward, his lips curved in a wry smile. "He only understands Polish and Persian," the officer says. The men behind him begin to grin openly. Another soldier pipes up, "Sir, you've likely heard of him. He's huge. 6 feet tall, can fling grown men around like rag dolls. He's wrestled multiple opponents at once and won every time. Our enemies quake just hearing his name." The soldiers descend into barely concealed hilarity, nudging one another knowingly. Brown, baffled and increasingly impatient, insists on an immediate explanation. At this, the men gesture for him to follow them into a congested area of the docks, where rows of crates, barrels, and wooden pallets fill every inch of available space. A large wire mesh enclosure sits at one corner, labeled for cargo transport. Brown's eyes widen when he sees its occupant, a massive brown bear, easily weighing 200 pounds, towering on its hind legs to peer back at him. "That," a soldier remarks with a half-smile, "is Private Wojtek. Moron, a most unusual mascot." Brown is momentarily speechless. How, in the name of all that's sensible, did a bear end up on a Polish roster? The soldiers, all too eager to share the remarkable tale, gather around to fill him in. "It started back in April of 1942, begins one older private, hoisting his kit bag higher on his shoulder. Our people had been freed from Soviet gulags and were amassing near Tehran, waiting to join the Allied forces in North Africa. One night, a ragged kid showed up at our camp with a moving sack slung over his shoulder. Naturally, we were curious, so we offered him food. He looked starving. Then we noticed the sack was shifting and squirming in a peculiar way. Another soldier picks up the thread. When he opened it, out popped this scrawny bear cub. It had eyes too big for its face and looked terrified, yet somehow trusting. Maybe it was an orphan of war. Or maybe it had been separated from its mother. We couldn't just turn away. We handed the boy whatever we had to barter. A Swiss Army knife, a chocolate bar, some corned beef, you name it. He walked off quite satisfied, and that's how Wojtek became our companion. In those early weeks, they fed the little cub on condensed milk poured into a vodka bottle, with a rag for a makeshift teat. A young soldier named Demeter took special care of him, acting almost like an older brother, sleeping beside him if the nights got too cold, or making sure the bear got enough fluids in the desert heat. With every passing month, Wojtek grew stronger, bolder, and more playful. By the time they left Iran and crossed into Iraq, the cub had become a hardy adolescent bear, bounding around camp with surprising agility. WWII, Desert Adventures and Christmas Mischief. Caring for a bear in a scorching desert climate wasn't for the faint of heart. Wojtek discovered he loved water, especially showers, and he quickly figured out how to turn the spigots on by himself. More than once, the men found the camp water supply nearly depleted because Wojtek had treated himself to an extended blissful soak. And whenever the cooks got distracted, he would lumber into the kitchen area, hoping to scavenge bread, fruit, or, if he was lucky, leftover scraps of meat. During the holidays of 1942, the men decided to celebrate Christmas with fervor, arranging what rations they had into a makeshift feast. Dancing and singing filled the night air, leaving nobody sober enough to guard the food stores. Wojtek seized the opportunity, raiding the kitchen well into the early morning hours. The next day, the men discovered scattered bones and wrappers, but their annoyance melted into mirth. Wojtek's escapades, while inconvenient, provided a welcome distraction from the grim realities of war. In day-to-day life, the bear became an unofficial stress reliever. Soldiers lobbed oranges for him to chase, let him wrestle them for sport, and found themselves repeatedly bested by his sheer power. His reputation as the undefeated champion only solidified when he faced off against a bear owned by another Polish unit named Michael. Although the soldiers hoped the two might become friends, the encounter was anything but peaceful. Both animals lashed out in a flurry of claws and bites, leaving the men powerless to intervene. Mercifully, neither bear was mortally wounded, and in the aftermath, Michael was sent to the Tel Aviv Zoo, while Wojtek remained with his own unit. Drafting the bear into the Polish army. Eventually, the Polish Second Corps was reassigned to the British Eighth Army, destined for the grinding battles of the Italian peninsula. With shipments tightly regulated and no provision for pets, Wojtek's presence posed a logistical headache. But the soldiers refused to abandon their beloved mascot. Working with sympathetic officers, they devised a creative solution. If Wojtek was formally enlisted as a soldier, complete with a service number and paybook, he could sail with them as part of the official troop manifest. The British administrators were skeptical, but faced with unwavering Polish insistence, reluctantly agreed. Thus, Private Wojtek stepped, or lumbered, aboard the transport ship, officially recognized as a member of the 22nd Artillery Company. Upon arrival in Italy, he continued his antics. One day, as the convoy drove near a Mediterranean shoreline, he leapt out of a moving truck and bounded across the sand. Horrified beachgoers fled at the sight of a hulking bear sprinting toward the water, until Polish soldiers shouted reassurances in broken Italian and English. "Don't worry. Bear is good." Wojtek splashed happily in the shallows, then returned on his own, as though nothing were amiss. Curiously, Wojtek also liked to mimic the soldiers when they carried crates of supplies or munitions. He would lumber up to an ammunition box and test its weight, though to the men's amusement, he often preferred the lighter ones. Still, the spectacle of a large brown bear pitching in to help load trucks was too endearing not to notice. The pivotal Battle of Monte Cassino. Wojtek's defining moment, however, came in May 1944. The Allies had struggled through multiple offensives in a bid to break the German defenses at Monte Cassino, where a grand Benedictine abbey once stood. The structure was now reduced to rubble, while the surrounding hillsides lay blasted and bare from incessant bombing. The Polish Second Corps, newly assigned to the front lines, joined the fourth and final push to capture the high ground. Stationed just behind the active front line, the 22nd Artillery Company was tasked with firing salvo after salvo from their guns, the deafening thunder echoing through the valley. Explosions, rattling machine gun bursts, and swirling dust combined into a nightmarish symphony. Even so, Private Wojtek seemed unfazed by the cacophony. Observing the process, he watched artillery shells being hauled from supply trucks to the gun emplacements and took it upon himself to assist. He hefted crates of shells, sometimes half or partially full, other times truly loaded, and plodded over to the waiting artillery teams, who stared in awe. His timely help during the chaos of battle became a legendary anecdote, boosting morale among the exhausted men. When the Allied breakthrough finally occurred on May 12, 1944, the Poles had proven pivotal. In tribute, the 22nd Artillery Company revised its emblem to depict a stylized bear carrying an artillery round, forever celebrating Wojtek's role. They even promoted him to Corporal Wojtek, an honor that confirmed his place not only in their hearts, but also in their official records. Quiet retirement in Edinburgh. After the war's end, the Polish troops were demobilized in Britain. Many faced uncertainty about whether they could or even wished to return to a homeland, now under Soviet influence. For Wojtek, a new chapter unfolded at the Edinburgh Zoo, where he could roam in a more natural habitat, although he undoubtedly missed the camaraderie and chaos of army life. Still, old friends from the 22nd Artillery Company visited him often, slipping oranges or beer over the enclosure's barrier. He even made appearances on the children's television program. Blue Peter. A gentle giant who had once carried live ammunition through a battlefield, Corporal Wojtek lived out his days in relative peace, becoming something of a celebrity, a symbol of friendship forged under the direst of circumstances. In December 1963, he passed away at age 21, a ripe old age for a bear. Statues and memorial plaques now stand in both the United Kingdom and Poland, ensuring that the memory of a remarkable bear soldier who once wrestled with men and helped lift artillery shells at Monte Cassino endures. WWII. Remember our sponsors. Before we wrap up this incredible saga, a quick shout-out to our sponsor. Raid, Shadow Legends. The immersive RPG captivating millions. Use the link in the description or scan the QR code on your screen to claim a free starter pack, unlock powerful champions, and dive into an epic fantasy realm. Get your hero to level 50 with special promo codes, and gear up for challenging faction wars and tough dungeon bosses. Don't miss this opportunity. Download Raid, Shadow Legends now and see if your chosen champion can match Wojtek's fearless spirit. In the end, Corporal Wojtek remains an unforgettable testament to hope, resilience, and the remarkable bonds that can form, even in times of unimaginable hardship. His story reminds us that war, for all its brutality, cannot entirely extinguish kindness or camaraderie. Sometimes, that kindness manifests in a tall, friendly bear who drinks beer, showers too long, and steps up when the shells start flying. Long after the final shots were fired, and long after the smoky chaos on the docks of Naples had faded, people remembered the day they met a Polish soldier named Wojtek and discovered he was, quite literally, a force of nature.